Welcome back to the Personal Trainers Who Care podcast. I'm Vanya, personal trainer at Freeform Fitness, and I'm here with Brittany Gordon of The Healing Ginger. Today we're going to be talking about female hormonal health and nutrition, and we're going to be making something.
Yes, we're going to be making a chia seed pudding that is just enhanced with a little bit of protein powders.
Perfect.
I'm using a whey isolate, but it can definitely be made with vegan protein powder also, because as women, we need a little bit of extra protein in the things that we're consuming, because we have things like estrogen and progesterone that make it a little bit different for our bodies to synthesize it than that of our male counterparts.
Yeah, okay. Brittany, before we get started, how did you get into this line of work in the first place?
Well, honestly, I started off as a personal trainer about 11 years ago, and then I became a yoga instructor, and then it just felt like a natural progression for me because I am riddled with allergies, with gut health issues, to go back to school and learn nutrition. So it kind of started off as a selfish thing to figure out how to fix myself. I'd worked with naturopaths and doctors and allergists and whatever my entire life. So it was just like, okay, it's time for me to take charge sort of thing. And then it just became a natural thing to start talking about with my personal training clients or my yoga students. And then I was like, why aren't I doing this? Because this is what I'm excited about. So,
Yeah, I think that it's great that you have kind of like that personal experience to be able to relate to your clients as well, right?
I found it really helpful when I was like bridging into being like a full-time nutritionist and not like supplementing with PT and with yoga teaching. Just because I was like, okay, then I'm just going to work with my people. I'm going to work with the people that have skin health issues. I'm going to work with the people with allergies and gut health issues. And we're going to like figure that out. Then it was kind of like a natural, like getting plopped into working in sports nutrition because of my personal training background, right? And having worked with people that you're just like, you work so hard at the gym, but something isn't, like there's a piece that's missing for you, right? Like what's going on? What's your diet look like? What types of shifts can we make there? And then that led to female hormonal health. It was something that I started diving into, again, selfishly for myself, but it turned into something that I was just like, how do I not just have this information as someone that has ovaries and a uterus and has estrogen, progesterone circulating through her body? How are we not aware of these things? Right? And the more I started talking about it with my clients, the more I was like, oh, it's not just me. Like it's all of us. Like for some reason we never learned this. Right? And even like sitting talking with my mom, it's the same thing. She's like, oh, really? Dang. Right? Like it's like this shock thing. It becomes frustrating at a certain point.
Oh, for sure.
But it is like once you learn these things, you're just like, no wonder that didn't work for me before, right? Like we're not just tiny male bodies. We have a whole other thing going on inside of us. So
yeah, and I think it's really important to talk about these issues as well, which is sort of the purpose of these podcasts, because I think people kind of shy away from talking about these issues and they're kind of taboo for whatever reason, but it's like, no, just we have to share. And
we share, the more we share, the easier it is for all of us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when it comes to talking about women and hormones, a big part of our life is spent with the menstrual cycle.
Amen.
The lovely menstrual cycle.
So it is one of those things that like a lot of us are like, ugh, right? Like when is this over sort of thing, like just biding our time. But once we learn how to work with it and like what does our body need from 1 week to the next, like we start feeling amazing on a regular basis. One of the things I say to people, it always sounds like, I don't mean it to come off condescending, but every time I hear myself saying it, I'm like rude, is that a lot of the things like the PMS, the excessive cramping, the weight gain, the bloating, the weird bowel movements that come with our periods is very common, but it's not normal for us to experience at that level, right? And for so many of us, for so long, we've just been told like, just don't worry, menopause is around the corner, right? Like this is just the next 30 to 40 years.
And then you have menopause to enjoy.
Which is a whole other fun thing to experience. And
the funny thing I find about menopause is that the definition is having gone at least a year with no period.
12 months, yeah.
So it's like, oh, you don't even know that you're in it until it's over.
Right? Well,
Like,
and then
great.
there's perimenopause that is and isn't recognized by a lot of people in the medical community. Because like hormonal testing, right? A lot of the times if you go for hormonal testing, they send you on to this day, but that's a snapshot of that day, right? If you were doing true hormonal testing through blood work or whatever, you have to go multiple times. So you're checking like, are my estrogen levels actually rising? Are my progesterone levels rising, right? Like what's the follicle stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone? Like what do they look like? Are they dropping? Right? So going once doesn't give us a ton of information. So this idea of perimenopause, which happens up to a decade before actual menopause sets in, a lot of people don't get like a diagnosis or told that it's going on, and it's like baby menopause, right? It's like dipping your toes in. And depending on when you started menstruation and what your like family history of it is, it can be as early as 35. People start experiencing being like, my period's off, like things are weird, things feel different than they normally do, and that's your hormones starting to shift and get you ready for menopause.
And going back to the idea that you can't just take one snapshot of where your hormones are, they fluctuate depending on what phase you're in.
Yes.
So the menstrual cycle, we have 4 different phases that we go through. Can you talk a little bit about those 4 different phases and how nutrition plays a role in modifying those?
It's one of my favorite things. I was talking to somebody recently and they were like recounting being in like high school phys ed, like, you know, when they did sex ed, and somebody raising their hand being like, does what I eat affect how my period is? And they're like, that's nutrition. This is menstruation. They're 2 different things. And you're like, but they're not, right? It's like going to the gym, but not making any modifications for your diet, right? Like not increasing your protein or adding more veg or whatever it is, and expecting rapid results. Okay. So it's the same with menstruation. The 4 phases. The first one is menstruation. It's your period. So your menstrual cycle starts on the first day of your period. I'm looking at the camera for that because I feel like a lot of us don't know. Some people think it's the last day of their period is when it starts, but that doesn't give us an indicator of like what your cycle is. Because 1 month your period might last 3 days, another one it's 5, 4, right? So you have to go with the first day that you start bleeding. So that could be spotting too, depending on what your cycle looks like. Second phase is follicular. That's the phase when people feel like superstars. We feel like ourselves. Right? We're normal people. We have loads of patience. We're not hungry all the time. We're not bloated. We got energy. We feel great. Okay.
And this is probably the best time to aim for those personal bests in the gym, right?
Yes. So yes, but then there's ovulation. So ovulation, unless you have something like endometriosis, right, is normally awesome. Okay. If you have something like endometriosis, it's probably the beginning of the end of the good days for you for the rest of the month. Okay. It's just like pain, not great. But for people that don't fall into that category, there is like a little boost of testosterone, right? Our estrogen, our progesterone's up. Progesterone helps us not feel anxious. Testosterone helps us feel flippin' amazing, right? I call it peacocking. It's like the day where you're like, I will wash my hair and blow dry it, right? Like you feel good about yourself. You want to do stuff. That is the time. You want to go, like if you've ever been afraid of doing weightlifting, go. Right? If you're afraid of the spin class, go. Right? Like go for your personal best. Like lift the heavy things that day. Do the big jumps that day. Because you're going to feel amazing, even if you don't feel like you got as good as you should have, sort of thing. And then there's luteal phase. Nobody likes it. Luteal phase is the beginning of the end for a lot of people. Depending on your cycle, you can get like a week into luteal and be totally fine. But then it's normally like a week leading up to your period for most is when things start feeling not so great, right? Like your PMS symptoms come in, your mood and energy gets really low, and it just doesn't feel awesome. Does it need to feel that way? Absolutely not. When we're nourishing ourselves, and I'll go back and I'll insert some foods, when we're nourishing ourselves appropriately through the other phases of the month, so from menstrual to ovulatory, luteal isn't that bad. right? And we can ride the wave of the high progesterone, right? Progesterone is anti-anxiety. It's our natural anti-anxiety med. It should help improve our sleep. It should reduce pain and discomfort, but it will make us a little bit more mellow than we're used to. So if you're normally really high energy, you're probably going to be a little bit lower energy. Okay. So modifying our workouts to accommodate the fact that we don't have the energy that the estrogen was giving us at the beginning half of the month. It's a fine thing. It's not bad, right?
I know a lot of clients, they get frustrated from one day to the next if they don't feel like they could lift as much or go for as long, and they get frustrated, right? So hopefully this conversation can help people understand that that's okay. Yeah. Depending on your schedule, you're not going to feel amazing every single time and be able to hit those personal bests.
Yes, and figuring out how to like modify our workouts and how we're feeding ourselves during those times too will make a massive difference, because now you're not fighting against yourself on top of everything else, right? Like doing a deadlift is hard enough without you being mad at yourself the whole time, right? Because then you're just gonna cry, or I would. So all of that to say, like the building blocks, like it starts at the beginning, right? The beginning is your period, but it also kind of feels like the end of everything because it's like starting over again. So a lot of what we do through the month, nutritionally speaking, is giving our body the building blocks that it needs: fat, protein, in order to make the hormones that we require to feel the good up and then the cascade back down, without feeling like it's a roller coaster. Like it should feel like a gentle hike up, and then we're coming back down the mountain, setting up for the next hike, is how it should kind of feel, like mellow. All right. So during our menstrual cycle, this is where my dieting crew, those of us that are like, I'm losing weight, I'm doing it, and I'm cutting those calories out, right? And we're going hard on it, feel the most like turmoil, because we feel all of a sudden insatiable. Like, I'm hungry now. Okay. What we don't realize is there is an increase in caloric requirement during our period. Okay. It's up to 250 extra calories a day. So if we think about it in that, like, I'm in a 500 calorie deficit a day. Now it's 750. That's more than a meal. Okay. So you're going to be hungry. So for a lot of my clients that are really aiming for that fat loss or that body composition shift, I recommend not dieting during your period. It's not a free for all, like order nothing but poutine and chicken wings, right? Like, it's not what I'm saying, but give yourself a break. Just eat an appropriate amount of maintenance calorie. So ditch the 500. Okay. And then we want to focus on protein during that time. I always think about it as like your uterus is just doing crunches for 3 to 5 days, or however long your period lasts, right? After a workout, we take in protein to recover the muscles because they've been breaking down, right? Same deal. But your uterus just doesn't finish until it's finished, and it's days. Okay, so you got to fuel it.
For sure.
So taking in protein becomes like your number one priority during your period. Number two priority is fats, because when they taste delicious, they're super satiating, and they're going to help make sure that your hormones, as they plateau back out, we get most like physiologically similar to men, even though we're bleeding, which is a weird thing to say, but they plateau back out. So we're resetting, right? So that fat is helping your body reset. It's also helping with any inflammation that might be going on. A lot of people get bloated during their period. They might gain weight, that type of stuff. We want to make sure that your body has what it needs so it's not struggling. Okay. And then the last one is carbohydrates. So I'm just going to clarify, because when people hear carbs, they're like, pasta. Got it. Yes, pasta, bread, grains, but it's all your fruits, all your vegetables, your leafy greens, your legumes, nuts and seeds even fall into that category. It's a massive category. Okay. So those become important. Fiber-rich carbohydrates is where we want to go, especially if you have weird bowel movements during your period. Okay. Does that help? Is a lot.
No, that's great. It is a lot. But and I think that a lot of it falls under, again, things that we already know as a general health standpoint. Everybody knows we need to be eating more fruits and vegetables and fiber, right? So it's just understanding that, okay, maybe during certain times of your period or menstrual cycle, maybe you want to focus on that even more.
Yes. The other piece is how often we're fueling ourselves. During our period, we become really sensitive to blood sugar dips, right? Your body just doesn't tolerate it quite as well.
Where the chocolate cravings come.
Chocolate cravings, that's my favorite. Yeah. I could talk about cravings for a whole other episode with you. But chocolate cravings, because chocolate in its natural form, so dark chocolate, raw cocoa, those cacao nibs, is actually high in magnesium. Magnesium is a mineral that helps relax muscles. So again, your uterus is doing sit-ups for 6 days or however long your period is. It's just soothing. Right? So, and again, if your bowel movement tends to back up during your period, you're probably in a category where you crave chocolate even more. The issue is we crave chocolate and we're like, Mars bar it is, right? Like we're getting the milk chocolate. So then we get trace amounts of these minerals and we're left in a place where your body's like, that wasn't what I asked for. No. So it gets louder about it and gets louder about it. And then we start being like, I failed myself. But you didn't fail yourself. You just needed dark chocolate. So dark chocolate covered almonds is normally the area I push my clients to, because then we're getting some fat, we're getting some protein, and you're getting the chocolate. And almonds also have magnesium in them. There you go.
And would that resolve any like cramping issues as well? If
it can help soothe it. So taking a magnesium supplement a week leading up to your period, if you have really bad cramps, can actually be really therapeutic. Like it can be really, really beneficial for people. So if you are someone that has like severe cramps and you're not in the endometriosis camp, because that's a whole different thing going on there, the magnesium can help. I mean, magnesium might help a little bit with endometriosis, but it's a whole different level of pain. Okay. So increasing like the fiber and the fat and stuff like that just makes things more enjoyable for you with the pudding that we're doing. That's why we're putting the chia seeds in it. So the chia seeds go in because they're rich in omega-3 fatty acid, which is just anti-inflammatory. It's awesome. It's an essential fatty acid. We as North Americans do not eat enough of it because people hate fish. Fish is delicious. But it's also really high in fiber, right? It's a seed and it's high in soluble and insoluble fiber. So the stuff that bulks and the stuff that moves. Okay. So it's
Which means it makes your poop nice and bulky. And easy to go through, hopefully.
It helps you package it up.
So maybe we'll just get right into making these lovely puddings then. You were saying that another reason why you chose this recipe is because it's fairly easy to modify depending on what you need during what phase that you're in.
Yes. Right? So I mean, you can do like seed cycling with like sesame seeds and pumpkin seeds and like all the seeds. You can do that and make like energy balls out of it, which is great. And it's an easy one to have in your bag after a workout. You just like toss it in, grab it. But then you're making 2 different types of things and knowing like when to switch them up throughout the month. This isn't going by like seed cycling standards at all. So want to make that clear. But what it's doing is it's giving us a source of like a healthy carbohydrate for us. It's sustainable blood sugar, like burn. It's giving us this good fat to help reduce inflammation, because again, that's what we're trying to do during our menstrual, our ovulatory, our follicular phase, so that luteal feels cool, right? The goal is to eventually get us to a place where you have like maybe 2 days where you like want to cry, stab someone and eat a soft pretzel, right? As opposed to like 2 weeks of it. Okay. So at every phase, it's about like, let's reduce inflammation, let's balance out our blood sugar, let's support our system. So that's kind of what we're trying to do as we go through it. So
how do we start?
2 containers. All right. You literally need half a cup and then a tablespoon. It's the easiest thing in life. It's mostly why I picked it. So
it's only like 4 ingredients.
It's super easy. So it's 2 tablespoons of chia seeds. And you just dole them in. So you can do this all in one giant container, but I am a fan of being able to grab the thing I want to eat so that I can just eat it without having to be like, and now I'm going to divide it in 2.
And if you want to look fancy and pretty, you can use mason jars. I've seen that.
Yes, I made some ahead of time for the magic of television, and they are in glass containers. And then it's 2 tablespoons of protein powder. Again, this is a whey isolate. I use the isolate instead of the concentrate because it's higher in the essential amino acids that female bodies need. Concentrate is fine. It burns a lot slower. It just doesn't lend to lean muscle build quite as much as whey isolate does. Okay.
Yeah. And then what if somebody wants to use a plant-based protein?
If you want to use plant-based protein, my recommendation is first and foremost, make sure it's sprouted or fermented. Okay. That just means that the outer shell of whatever plant they use to make it is going to be like degraded a bit. So you are less likely to experience gas and bloating when you consume it. The next thing I would recommend is 13 or less ingredients. You don't need more than that. And then a 2 protein, right? So like pea and rice kind of thing. With plants, they are very, very rarely complete proteins, which just means they probably have all 9 of our essential amino acids, but not in the proper distribution that our body needs. So when we combine them up together, boom, right? Like beans and rice. That kind of combo.
Common combos,
The one that is a complete protein is quinoa. I haven't found a quinoa protein, and I can only imagine it to be disgusting. So yeah, like a split pea, a yellow pea, and rice or something like that. I know a lot of my clients like hemp hearts, but again, hemp seeds aren't complete. This is a half cup of this stuff. To open the second one. But yeah, so if you're going to do hemp protein, just like add some nuts or seeds or something like that in it. This, you have the chia seeds, which is a second source of protein, so you don't have to worry about it too much.
And I think straight hemp powder is the grossest thing in the world.
Oh my God,
so
I think it's
do
so
not recommend.
It's one of those ones, it's a last resort for clients that just like are so intolerant to everything else that it's like, okay, there you go. But at the same time, I'm like, if you're going to do it, I would actually just prefer you use hemp seeds. Like just put 2 tablespoons of hemp seeds in. You're good. You got it. Okay. I'll just use the fork. And then you stir, stir, stir. That's literally it. That's the whole thing.
Nice and easy.
And because it's a chia seed pudding, it needs to sit in the fridge for at least 20 to 30 minutes before it starts gelling up. I recommend doing it overnight. And then when you consume it, just give it another good stir. Okay, so from here, you would add whatever toppings you want. I have raspberries, I have coconut. You could add hemp seeds to it for extra fat or protein. And again, that would be dependent on your cycle. So during your menstrual cycle, I would do it like this with some raspberries. Okay, during your follicular, go nuts, like do whatever you want. It's an estrogen dominant phase, which sounds like a bad thing because we're always so mad at estrogen. We're mad at estrogen because it can increase fat storage, but it also, the estrogen that we have in our body during child rearing years kind of mimics testosterone in that it encourages human growth hormone to be secreted during exercise. That's why the follicular phase is normally the one associated with like go hard at the gym. Because that's when you're going to put on the most muscle mass. Okay. But so during that one, nothing really fancy needs to happen. Like have your protein, have your carbs, have your fat, and get into the routine of feeding yourself regularly. And so what I normally say to clients is every 3 to 4 hours having a meal or a snack so that your blood sugar isn't plummeting. Okay. A part of that is that we just want our metabolism to feel safe and comfortable and like it can burn the calories that are coming in to it. The other half is that when we bonk out blood sugar wise, we end up making decisions that we normally wouldn't make. So that's when we're like grabbing the muffin at the Starbucks because it's the easiest thing and I'm starving, right? Or we start getting hangry. So get into the habit of like packing a protein bar with you or having your chia seed pudding after your workout, those kinds of things. Ovulatory, again, keep doing your life. Put whatever you want in your chia seed pudding or like just all your macronutrients, carbs, fat, protein. Keep eating at regular intervals. Make sure you feed yourself after you do your hard workouts. And then you'll start noticing a little like blip. So you might be a little bit hungrier because your calorie requirement is starting to climb up. Okay.
Leading up to
the luteal. Your luteal phase is a high progesterone phase. That's the hormone we should all be mad at.
Yeah.
No, I'm joking. So high progesterone phases don't like really high intensity exercise. They just don't like it. There isn't enough estrogen, at this point in time for the human growth hormone to be secreted at the same levels as it was before. So you are not going to put on muscle mass in the same way. Progesterone is also the hormone that is responsible for getting you pregnant, basically, and keeping you pregnant. Okay. So its job is to reroute protein to potential like fetus growth.
Right.
Okay. So its job is going to deter your protein intake away from your muscles. So a lot of the times when we go really hard at the gym, you're not getting the gains that you would want during that time because your progesterone is kind of blocking the uptake and the synthesizing of protein to stop the cannibalism of it.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Your body wants you to make a baby.
Yeah, right? It's all it wants.
Yeah.
So it's like, so that's why switching up the type of workout that we're doing, right? So slower reps, right? Like not as high intensity. Forget the burpees for a bit.
Yeah.
Like that type of thing during that phase. And then, then we're in our periods again.
Yeah.
Then we're back at the beginning.
It repeats over and over again.
So yeah, that's the luteal is where we shift to like a higher focus in protein. So that's where you might want to add like an extra scoop of protein powder into your chia seed pudding or add an extra half serving of chicken at dinner or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. So while we're waiting for our pudding to set, now when it comes to things like, other hormonal issues that women may experience, there's menopause that we mentioned earlier, and then there's things like PCOS as well. So women who have PCOS or are in menopause, they typically complain about weight gain, right? And how difficult it is to lose weight. And for the average person, when they think about, how do I lose weight? They think calorie restriction.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily the best thing when you're experiencing those issues.
No.
Right?
Yeah. So calorie restriction for just about anyone, male, female, like whatever, it doesn't matter what type of hormones you have in your body, isn't a great idea.
Yeah.
Right? Like your body will allow for fat loss for a certain period of time, and then leptin secretions, right, will increase. Now I'm hungry all the time, right? Like your ghrelin will go down. So now I'm not feeling satiated as quickly because your body wants to keep you at homeostasis. So even when I'm working with people that like their goal is fat loss, right? Like they want to change their body composition, they want to lose fat mass. We don't, like I do look at calories, but my clients don't. Right? My clients focus on like, did that make you feel full? Was it satiating? Did it taste good? Right? I want you to focus on those things and the nutrients coming onto your plate over like, that's 100 calories, that's 300 calories. Oh, this one's over. So yes, you need a caloric deficit to lose weight. But then when we throw in something like PCOS, where insulin resistance might be an issue, right? Or menopause, where insulin resistance might be an issue, right? Like they have similar issues in that area. It's not about caloric restriction. It's about blood sugar balancing. Okay. So with PCOS, there's a couple of different things, right? Like it can be estrogen dominance is the issue. It can be insulin resistance. It can be gut health. It can be a combo of them. So it's a kind of like it's a chicken and the egg. Like where do we start to kind of baseline you and start moving you forward? Okay. So fat loss is completely available to those people. It's just going to look different. Okay. So with both of the categories, I would start with blood sugar regulation. So like, what does your meal look like? Are you just having a plate of like just apple? Can we add some almond butter, peanut butter, sunflower seed butter, whatever butter to the plate? Okay. To balance it out a little bit. Can we add more protein to the salads that you're eating? Because those feel like a really healthy thing. That's one of the most common things I see when people are trying to lose weight. It's about just cutting back all the time, right? And we start thinking about like, what should we be adding in to this leaf bowl now, right? Because we've like cut out the almonds because that's too high fat. Now we've cut back on the chicken in there because that is too much calorie and it's just more and more green is showing up. And now we're not using a salad dressing anymore because that's bad for us. We're just like sprinkling some lemon juice on it and pretending we're happy about it.
Yeah.
Whereas if we made the salad to have like some avocado, a whole chicken breast, right? Lots of different crunchy vegetables, maybe your leafy greens or a green mix, right? And a salad dressing that you enjoy. I don't care if it's ranch, right? You put that on there. Now, one, you're not hungry 10 seconds after you finish eating your stupid salad. But then two, it was a pleasure to eat instead of like this miserable thing where you're just like waiting till you get home and you get to eat other food that's in your cupboard. Right? So building it up to be more sustainable is really important. For individuals in menopause, it becomes a protein game because again, your estrogen has dropped, your progesterone is next to gone. Right? So we have 3 different types of estrogen. I don't want to get nerdy about it, but there's a different type of estrogen being produced when we are in menopause, and it is more likely to simulate like testosterone, which is why we get that androgen fat around the midsection. That's why women tend to gain there. Also, if you look at someone that has like estrogen dominance issues in PCOS, that's often where a lot of the fat is being stored, is around that midsection area. And that comes back to, okay, like, what are we eating? How are we eating it? And how can we combine things? So menopause protein is like, I want it to be top of mind. Right?
And then like hormones aside, as we age, we tend to have more difficulty digesting our protein, right?
Yes. I would argue that that's like a lifelong like abuse of our digestive system that gets us to that point, right? We're in our 20s and we're like, I'll do whatever I want. Taco Bell, is it meat? I don't know, right? Like that's kind of, it's like those years of it. And then we get into like our 70s or 60s and our guts are just like, apple with peel on it? Absolutely. So that comes back to a gut health issue. So I would be like, well, what's your bacteria like? Maybe stomach acid is low because like stress on your body has been high. It doesn't need to be like life stress. It can be like maybe our body hasn't been loving what we're digesting or XYZ, right? Like our poops have been bad and that is stressful on our system. So it turns into this, what do we need to support ourselves, right? Like, do I need to have like, I don't know, some pineapple with my chicken when I'm eating it because there's naturally occurring digestive enzymes in it? Do I need to take a digestive enzyme, like a supplement, right? To kind of help me out on heavier meals. But there are ways around that stuff. Okay. Whey isolate, a lot of protein powders and stuff like that are typically easy for people to stomach. So if you're finding it really challenging to get your protein in, do that. Or if oatmeal really agrees with you, there's protein in that. Right? Like have that. If yogurt agrees with you, just get the Greek yogurt so you get the extra 2 grams of protein. Just do that, right? Like, so it's those little things that we can do to get an extra gram here, an extra 2 grams there. That makes a big difference.
Yeah, and I think what's also important for people to be mindful of is like, it might be an experiment for you, right? Figuring out what works for you, what doesn't work. Because a lot of times I get questions like, oh, I read an article that's saying, oh, I shouldn't eat this, or I should eat more of that. And it's like trying to navigate what works best for them. It's like, it's not a black and white yes or no answer.
I mean, I wish. What we do would be so much easier. But it's also that there's so much information out there that it's like, oh, I read this thing, like this is what I'm supposed to do. And people jump on that for like 5 days and they're like, not working. Right? And we're like, next article. You need to stick with something for at least a month to see if it is making any type of meaningful impacts on your body, your system, your mind, your everything. It can take a minimum of 2 weeks for you to start feeling any type of substantial physical or mental changes to something, especially if it's like sleep that you're working on. But also if you're doing something like cutting out salt or cutting out added sugar, right? Like everything is going to suck. All the food you eat is going to suck or feel like it sucks for 2 weeks. Because that's how long it takes to get new taste buds, right? 2 weeks in, everything is like, oh my God, it's like a whole new world. Is this what apples taste like? Like it turns into this amazing experience all of a sudden, but you got to give it time, right? It's like when I have a client on a program, the minimum is 3 months because a month is just enough to be like, how's it going? Right? And be like, okay, things are feeling good. Let's keep going.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. When things are working, we kind of just have to keep doing it.
Right?
Yeah, there's no reason why we have to like quickly move on to the next thing, which I find a lot of people do. They're constantly jumping on to what's next.
Well, it's because we want the results to be quick, right? Because we feel like, or I feel, I don't want to talk for everybody, but I think many individuals feel like we got to where we are that feels uncomfortable for us quickly, but it didn't happen quickly. Right. And so even when I'm working with my clients, I'm like coaching them on things and they're like falling back into old language or negative patterns of thought and like self-talk.
Yeah.
And they are apologetic about it because it's something that we work on. I'm like, there's no need to apologize for it. Like we've been working together for maybe 3 months. You've been talking to yourself like that for decades.
Yeah.
Right. So even if it was just like, well, in my 20s, I ate like this. I'm like, yeah, but once you were in your 30s, what worked for you in your 20s didn't work. And then once you got to your 40s, what worked for you in your 30s don't work for you anymore. Heck, you get to like 45 and what was working for you at 40 doesn't work anymore, right?
Exactly.
Like, so it's all about like learning that kind of flexibility so that you can ebb and flow with things, right? Maybe a celery juice diet isn't it. Right? And that is something I give everyone permission to give up within a day.
Yeah.
So,
it might work for a 20-year-old, but everything basically works when you're like 20.
Yeah. I mean, you could go out binge drinking all weekend and then wake up and have orange juice and be like 6-pack still there. It's a whole different life in your 20s, right? But as your estrogen, your progesterone levels shift, right? Like from pre-baby to post-baby, right? Like all of those different phases are going to be different. Even if you are 30, right? Whatever, you got pregnant at 31, you had your baby at 32, those bodies are going to feel incredibly different, right? And what worked at 31 isn't going to work for you the same at 32. No. Your body is different now. You're postnatal, right? So after having a child, you are forever and always postnatal till you get to menopause.
So just be kind to yourself, be patient. And it's going to be an ongoing process.
We can get to a place where it's exciting and it doesn't feel like a punishment. I think that's the key. At the end of the day, so many of the diets or the restrictive eating patterns or the cleanses, the detoxes, the whatevers that we have done to ourselves, with ourselves, however you want to phrase it, have really taught us to be too harsh with ourselves, right? It really encouraged this, like, well, if you don't do everything from 1 to 10, you failed at it. And you failed at it and it was your fault. It wasn't that this was too restrictive, right? And so then as we're starting to learn a little bit more compassion and self-care and all like joy of eating again, it still feels like, oh, did I fail at that? Right? When we need to start like encouraging ourselves as much as we can to a place of like, it was like this on Monday, it's gonna be like this on Tuesday, and this is what I need to do to get through my week and still eat a vegetable. Right? So it's not about winning and losing at the end of the day. It's about like nourishing our body so we feel our best most of the time.
And then once we feel at our best, it does get easier to make better choices, right? So it kind of just spirals. And
well, we just want to make different choices at that point, right? So, and that's something I love doing with clients. We go through like a reset period, not with all of them, but with many of them. And then it's like, yeah, you're done. Like, do whatever you want. And they're like, I went out, I got my favorite like pizza, my poutine, like I got my meal. I felt awful. And I think it's my favorite, not because I'm horrible or mean. It's my favorite because it's a reminder that like that's just how your normal was. That's what you felt like all of the time. And now you're starting to feel like I feel energy. I don't have a slump at 2 to 4 p.m. I sleep through the night. I'm not waking up to pee or change my sheets because I sweat so much at nighttime, right? Like it starts feeling like a really different life, right? And that doesn't mean that you're not going to be like, I'm gonna have chips and watch this movie, because that's a part of a balanced life. But it means that more often than not, you're going to be looking at the dinner you're making and be like, I think I can throw in some extra vegetables, right? Or like, what protein am I putting in here? And become more curious and exploratory with the foods that you're eating.
Right.
You're excited for it, right? Because everything you were eating to get there didn't suck.
I find that's the part I've been kind of struggling with in terms of encouraging people to kind of like choose these healthier patterns for themselves, because until you feel what it feels like to feel good, and then experience at a time where you felt your old normal, like it's hard to believe that things could be better.
Or like, what does that even look like? You can't like envision it when you're in it.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
It's one thing at a time, right? So you have people coming to you to work out, right? So it's like, feel strong, right? Start feeling strong first. And then that feeling of strong is going to be like, maybe I don't want like the hamburger. Maybe I do want like a grilled chicken burger instead, right? And it's just like, that's that first little step that you're just like, oh, like I feel even stronger this week, right? Or like I didn't feel as sore after my workout when I had something after my workout, because I find that happens a lot, right? Like we do our workout and then you're like, then I just went on with my life and I'm like, did you eat something? Please tell me you ate something. And they're like, nah. Right? And we start noticing that like, oh, when I fuel myself after a workout, my like soreness afterwards isn't like 5 days. It's like a day. Right? Or if we're doing like run training for like a marathon or something, be like, I started drinking water during it and game changer. Right? Like little things like that, that like even some of us in the profession, we forget that we're supposed to do, right? So when I see someone that's coming in being like, I feel so lost, you have to, like the compassion that goes there, you're like, I get it. Let's just do one thing. Let's start with water. It's my favorite place to start, because people are like, oh, dang. Like, I didn't know I didn't have chapped lips. I was just dehydrated. Right? Like those little things make such massive changes that it gets us interested to be like, well, if that did that, what else could happen? Right? And it kind of starts like creaking the door open to like, what could I actually be feeling like regularly? Could I stand up from the couch without moaning? Right? Those things.
So yes, just start small, even if it seems insignificant. Like, if it's something new that you're adding to your current lifestyle, like it's amazing what a glass of water can do.
It's bonkers. Like it really truly is. But yeah, the smaller the better. Like this more you feel like, ugh, is that even worth it? Then you're nailing it. Start there. That's the place. Right? Exactly. Even if it's just like, I'm gonna start having breakfast twice instead of 0 times this week. Cool. Those type of things that you're always like, yes. And I think it's easy for us to be like, the world of possibilities over here, guys, like come on in. And they're just like, feels scary. But of course it feels scary, because like how many times do you have to get like zapped and burned by these fad diets or these like 30-day challenge or this to like a new body before you're just like, it's just going to happen that way again. There's no point in getting excited. There's no point in investing extra energy into it or actual energy into it, because it's just not going to work out. Right? But when you have like a personal trainer in your corner or a nutritionist in your corner to be like, I will be your cheerleader until you believe the things that I'm saying about you. Right? And I think a lot of us need that. I've needed it. I've had a personal trainer.
And I think that's it. You know, having somebody in your corner who believes in you more than you believe in yourself. Right? And it's just, that's what you need to get you even started and keep you going until you can get to the point where you finally realize, oh, maybe I can do it. 100%. All right. So you said you made some earlier. That's all ready to go. So let's see the finished product.
Look at this beautiful boy or girl. This beautiful thing. I shouldn't gender it. Give you a spoon if you want to try it, but don't feel pressure on camera. But so delicious.
Lovely raspberries, some coconut.
Some just mashed up raspberries. So I used fresh raspberries because honestly, I didn't have time to take out the frozen ones. But most of the time I just use frozen fruit. It's cheaper. It's like just, you don't have to worry about it going bad in your fridge, because how many times have you bought berries and been like, whoops, forgot about them? But it also leaves like a syrup on top. right? So it kind of feels like the fruit on the bottom yogurt when you're doing it. I know it sounds silly. Don't at me. But then it just like, it really sweetens it up and it feels like something tasty. But the protein powder does have monk fruit in it, which is a natural sweetener. It doesn't spike your blood sugar, yada, yada, yada. But yeah. Ta-da.
Yeah. And then, if you're, leaving this in the fridge overnight, you just throw in your frozen fruit and it kind of just thaws by the time you're ready to eat it, right?
So I made this guy, it doesn't even move, right? No. I made it last night. So I just give it a stir in the morning and it's good to go. Like even these guys will be starting to like gelatinous up, but not quite as much. I like mine nice and hard and gooey. Yeah. If you are a person that has textural issues,
I know some of these people.
Put it in the blender. So let it harden up overnight and then plop it in the blender. Blend it up. It'll be closer to the consistency of yogurt than lizard eggs. I love it. Yeah. I'm here for it. But some people aren't. So, but this ends up like per container is like $1.50. Right? So I'm trying to be like economically conscious because everything is so expensive. But so it ends up being really cheap to do it this way. So it's why I encourage my clients to make their post-workout stuff as opposed to like go buy your RX bars or your Cliff bars or whatever you use, but you are spending like 10-fold the amount. Yeah. Exactly.
All right. Cool. Yeah, let's give these a try. Yeah, I like having the coconut as well. Gives it a nice crunch.
Nice crunch. Yeah. You can also add like granola on top if you have it. I just didn't have any. No. I find raspberry to be the best berry to put in because it's already seedy. So if you're like, I don't know about this texture, you get the weird seedy raspberry seeds in there. You don't even notice. No. Yeah. Also, last one on this, if you are an individual that has weird bowel movements during your period, chia seeds are your friend. They're going to help bulk up your stool, not to be gross while you're eating. But it also, if you're constipated, it will help make sure it's not painful. Sorry again, I know you're eating. But you're like, we work.
I think we need to be more comfortable talking about, the gross.
I talk about poop all day long. Yeah.
Yeah, even the way we talk about our periods even. Like
just talk about it. Right? Like the hiding of everything, being like, oh no. My physiology is kicking in. Yeah,
I'm a fan of this one stand-up comedian, Michelle Wolf. She has this great bit where, we have all these like, fancy names for periods to make it sound less awful than it actually is. And she was like, we should just call periods bleeding tissue falling out of a hole. I'm like, that's what it is.
I'm always like the sloughing off of your endometrial lining.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what it is, guys.
You don't need to be cute, and it's a terrible time sometimes, and that's all right.
That's fine.
But it doesn't have to be totally awful.
Right? And the more we like figure out how to move and fuel ourselves throughout the month, and we're not leaning on restriction all of the time, the more you'll notice that it like you seamlessly transition from one to another. You might not be as fatigued during your luteal phase or your period, and it just feels nicer. Yeah. Right? Like who doesn't want to live that way?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So instead of having to, be in a fetal position for however long that you normally
chugging Advil, right?
Maybe you can bring it down to just a day or two and you can enjoy your life a little bit more.
Yeah,
right?
There is no need to grin and bear it.
No.
Also, if you're in pain, just share that pain.
Yeah.
Like, don't hurt others, but like let people know where you're at, right? And I think there is starting to be more awareness, like in Gen Z, younger generations, people are starting to be like, oh yeah, whatever, right? Like it's not a thing. But I think it's
whisper to each other in the bathroom.
Anybody. But it's like it's a natural thing. It's a normal thing, and you deserve to feel good as often as possible. Yeah.
All right. So Brittany, where can people find more about you? What do you have going on?
I am at healingginger.ca. You can also find me on Instagram. That's where I give a bunch of my free content at Healing Ginger. Yeah. And I have some like hormonal workshops and stuff coming up, a live one, but I also have like pre-recorded stuff that you can download and watch your leisure.
All right, cool. And that's available on your website?
All on healingginger.ca.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you for the pudding. And thank you
anytime
for all that great information on hormones and female hormonal health. We definitely need to learn more about ourselves and talk about it. And you don't have to hide and suffer by yourself.
Don't grin and bear it.
No.
Lean into it. Yeah.
So thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.